going to do this first. Give some people a couple minutes to come on. We'll see if we can knock this out. Let's see. I got like 30 Word docs open. So sometimes the Word won't open when you have like 30 docs open. All right. So this is in 21207 Woodlawn. Really nice looking house, nice lot and everything.
It's vacant, paid off.
Okay.
Guy lives in Virginia. I guess he got it from his parents or.
Now, did you send him a letter or something from Drive for Dollars or?
No, this is from a Bandit sign.
Oh, sweet, sweet. Awesome, dude. Good job. Because it was like, this sounds like a little better lead than usual. Like it sounds like a paid lead, you know, because people live out of state. So out of state's really good, by the way. Whenever somebody lives out of state, in general, they're much easier to deal with. You give you an idea what he wants for it?
No, but I mean, he understands that he's not going to get what the houses are going for in the neighborhood. He said, I didn't even bring that up. He brought that up himself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, okay. Now, how about any pics of the inside, a video or anything?
No, I'm going Saturday to look at it.
Okay. 1,800 square foot, 4.5 baths. I mean, look, I don't know if you can finish the basement or not, but this lot and everything, we can take a quick look at the comps. Obviously, it's always going to determine on some other factors when you get there, but we can get a feel for it. I mean, what you would want to do when you get there on Saturday is, just get a video of it, start running the numbers. So how we handle this is you're going to go see it. Then you're going to kind of take a day. I'll look at it with you. We're going to really get the numbers right so that way they're perfect. And you're going to call back and present with them and say, look, he's out of state. You might send him an email, show him some of the comparables, show him things they're selling for, how much money you're going to put in it. And I call it like making your case essentially. Like if you were a lawyer, you would make your case, right? Before you go for any close or you try to get what we call like reverse closing, because we don't really close, right? What we do is we just present our case and then we just ask them what they'd like to do. And they usually close themselves, which is pretty funny. If you've presented your case properly, they'll close themselves. And it makes life a lot easier, by the way. So that's kind of that's our focus.
If you scroll down a little bit, the comps I found on Zillow are below it.
Okay. Let's look on the real comp. So Haddon's us. This one's us right here. 4802. Actually, the Woodbine is 30. That's Woodbine's ours too. So both of those are mine. Let's take a look and see how relevant they are. Let's see. I mean, this house at 1,800 square feet looks like a nice house, big yard and everything. Just what we want to see. Take a quick look and see what we come up with. Because the only thing Zillow leaves off a few things that are important. But the house we sold, the one we sold on Haddon, by the way, was pretty close to the end of the street. Didn't have a finished basement. It was a 1,800 square feet like yours, but I have to say, I think yours is nicer. Mine was on the street. Yours is like really set back nicely on the lot. Yours has like a lot of extra curb appeal that you don't usually have with a house. So I would say you're definitely just off the top of my head, seeing that two of my comps are there. I know both of those comps and what they were. So either one of them was nice as yours, just for the record.
So he said the basement is half finished.
Oh, cool.
Finished. Half of it's a laundry room.
Let's take a quick look, though. The only reason I want to get a little detailed into it, I want to know what you're dealing with a little bit, but
right.
But when I go there, my thing's building rapport, building trust, like not putting yourself in any corners, obviously. Just get as much information as possible. It's always what we're trying to do here, and then present our case. Hold on 1 second. Michael Green. Hey, good. Hey, I got a coaching call with my students. Is there a way we can reschedule a time? I know we're supposed to talk at 3:15. Cool, man. All right, yeah, I want to talk to you. Just make sure everything's going good because it's been a little bit of slowdown on leads here. But yeah, we'll talk whenever I see your email, okay? All right, thanks, man. It's like 45 minutes late to our call. It's like a little teeny bit late. On the late side, I didn't even call him because he's always so hard to get a hold of. Okay, what am I doing wrong here? Yeah, that's why. I got dyslexia, see? It's 3849. I reversed the numbers. I'm like, I knew something was up. So I had to become a real estate investor, learning disabilities. I met this guy. So I had a little flooring store before I did this, and I had this little chintzy store right by DMV in Glen Burnie, and it was like back in this industrial area. And the guy who was my landlord was this guy named Stanley Schmuck, and so he sounds like a stupid guy, by the way, but he couldn't even read or write, but he owned like more than half of Glen Burnie, and I mean, he's worth probably 20-30 million dollars. And I mean, even the lease when he was signing it, like his daughter would sign it for him. He knew nothing, but real estate's one of the best industries ever. I mean, he was by no means a dummy, even though he didn't know how to read and write. So, he was one of those, old savvy investor guys. So, like, believe me, he might not have been able to read and write. He wasn't going to pass a test anytime soon, but you wouldn't want to negotiate with him and mess with him because, yeah, he knew his stuff, right? He was no dummy by any means, but he'd gotten smart at other things, right? Buying property, and he'd been doing it so long. At this time, it's probably like 15 years ago. And he'd been doing it 40, 50 years. I mean, he started when he was like, your guy's age and just been doing it. He's like 60, 70 years old. He just stuck with it for a long time. And, you start buying things and holding them for really long periods of time, not selling them. I mean, he was definitely getting into some stuff. The guy was an interesting character, though. But I always am interested by him because he was, like, from a education standpoint, he was pretty dumb. Which might have been the reason that inspired me to get in this business. Like, if that guy can do it, I'm like, that's like the only guy I've met that I'm smarter than. I went to 10th grade at least, and I can read and write. Not all that well, but I can do it. It's like he inspired me, like, if he can do it, I can definitely do it. It's always funny, though, because it don't take. I mean, it takes now. It does. Now, the thing is, I've had people work for me that I've had to fire that had MBAs who just had no common sense, though. But they could pass the test, really educated, but they couldn't, they couldn't see around the corner, essentially. They couldn't kind of like figure out that some stuff was coming. So
no street smarts.
No street smarts at all. With not wanting to learn them. And look, you have an MBA. I make the assumption you can learn if you want, but sometimes I think they take more stock in formal education and like some common, like what I call like strategic thinking. Right? And actually critical thinking is really important. And they should have a class on that in college, by the way. They might actually have it, just no one taking it. So, let's see. So we've seen some really high comps when we go this far out. What I'm going to do, just because I'm seeing such big comps, I'm going a little bit tighter just to see. Let's change a little bit.
A lot of the big comps I saw were like over 2,000 square feet.
Yeah, and that's usually the case, no doubt. See if there's any on your street.
That 3610, the second one.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you're on Mohawk.
To me, that was like the oddball one that was really high compared to all the rest of them.
Yeah, I mean, it is very high compared to all of them. Went for 301, but here's the thing. It does look just like your house. Like, legitimately looks just like your house. So when I look at that, I know you're thinking 210, it instantly makes me think that not 300, because I do think it's the oddball, but probably more than 210. So that's good news. Let's see why this might have been such a really low. I mean, nothing crazy going on with the renovation. Did full finished basement. And this house has a feel like it might be bigger than the tax record. Like, it looks like to me like there might be a third floor or something.
Yeah.
It's not maybe being caught up on the tax record because it's a very big looking house. 431. I don't know. Okay. Well, there's one comp. Yeah, I agree. It's probably and it went 18K less, so it's about 380, let's call it, on the market. 33 days, not that long for that price point. So it's good to know. Good to know it's a good street. Let's take a look at what's listed so we don't care. Borman. So this one's a little bit bigger, about 400 square foot bigger, but went for 280 also. In my opinion, this house don't quite really even look as nice as yours. Now the inside, they went crazy on the inside. And like putting a rehab show on. This might be one of Robert's. Got one of my students that does this with all tray ceilings and everything.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty big around that area. If you do all that extra work, you get some pretty big money for it. However, that's a 5.3. It's 2,200 square foot, a little bit better than yours. Borman, in my opinion, is probably not as good as Mohawk, though. But, that's just my opinion.
This property, too, is
270.
Right on the border. I don't know what the zip code next to it is.
21215. So actually, I'm probably looking at some 21215s, honestly. But yours is a better zip code, so it's not an inferior one. So you got
Okay.
275 here on Ridgewood. Look at it. Look at these ceilings in here, man. It's
Yeah.
like they're putting on an art show or something. Then it went nuts. I mean, that's some intricate stuff right there, man.
Right.
If I told my contractor to do that, it'd be okay. They'd be looking at me like, oh no, what? And I'd be like, yeah, man, I want you to make it look like a maze.
Mhm.
They'd be
It's
like,
like
what is
Pentagon
this?
ceiling.
I just should give them a picture of this and tell them to do it one time just so we could all like be like, see how close they actually get. It'd be like, it probably would end up cool, but it would be like completely the opposite or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't even, dude, that's nuts.
Is that
No,
is he hiding ductwork up in there? Is that part of the reason why he's doing that, or
no, they just do that around there, man. It's like this thing where they try and make like these tray ceilings and they go overboard with them. It's a couple of renovators in that neighborhood to do this on these houses where with the circles and stuff. It's like the same dude doing the circles. I mean, he definitely gets good money for his houses, no doubt. I mean, this is a beautiful house. I would say that even at some level, there's probably some people that feel like that maybe is too much. Like, I
yeah?
mean, but look at all this. I think this is appropriate and looks really nice. And, the bathrooms are really sharp. Did a great job on those. But I mean, even like this looks like some weird addition they knocked on. I mean, just, they're going like they got that. We talked about that as a sizzle feature. So they've definitely like are putting some energy into these. My guess is they're probably like way over renovating. I
Right.
mean, they're probably putting some serious money in these. But that's kind of what happens in that neighborhood. But now look, he got 275 for a 1,488 square foot house. I mean, he got like a seriously high comp because he did such a nice job. I'm saying he, it might be her, by the way. I don't know.
Mhm.
But Miller Group Construction LLC. So that's the owner's name. So he's actually a construction company, which makes sense probably. That's probably his niche is that he can do the work, so he can throw a lot of that extra stuff in there. And probably don't even cost him
Right.
that much. So okay,
Yeah.
it makes sense. The guy's probably a contractor. 91 days on the market, by the way. So he's set for a long time trying to get, he's overpricing. I don't ever believe in buying a house, overpricing it, and then setting the market. I always believe in like being sharply priced and like making people go crazy and bringing value. But because I don't want to sit on the market 90 days. I can tell you, I've been doing this a long time, and I've still not gotten the stomach for it. Just it wears me down. So let's see where we start looking like Nick. I mean, honestly, look at this one. This is 226 even for this, and it's only 1,100 square feet. And Nick's house is like way better than this. So this house is like nice inside, but when you see the outside, it's a much smaller looking house. Gonna have a smaller second floor. It's got the angled ceilings as you can see. Did a great job on the rehab. Looks really nice. Finished basement. Great home, but look at the outside. We only got one pic to look at, so let's see if we can blow it up so you guys can see it. You can see it's a nice looking little house, but Nick has the whole second floor. So, and he has that yard that looks really big and set back. I mean, his house, like
I
really,
believe it's
really,
got a wraparound porch.
yeah, wraparound porch is huge. I mean, this house is a very nice house, but like, I would say this is apples and oranges. Like, and you have the orange because that's what I prefer. I prefer oranges over apples. But for some, I guess this would be an apple, and maybe the other house was an orange. I don't know, but I like oranges better, so I'd be like, this is an orange. The other one's an apple. Yeah, this one should kill it. Now they got 226 and gave 7 back, so they got about 220. 10 days on the market. The owner's name's Lucky You. Got the house. Sean Wilson, I know him. He does he's an agent who lists a couple renovators properties, but yeah, you would clearly be better than this comp. So, I mean, I'm already bracketing you well over probably 220 to 230. We can see some more comps though. And I can see why like some of the ones that are really high, are definitely a little bit different. These are close. You see Borman again. Borman's super close. This one's 1800, 331. A little bit weird looking house kind of compared to yours. Very tight looking. I mean, you can see your neighbors like within feet. Yours is just really big looking compared to this. I mean, you might be 1,800. This might be 1,800. But if you were out personally shopping for a house, right? Look at this layout on the inside. It looks tight to me. If you were looking for a house, you're probably picking the other house, right? The other house has like curb appeal and pretty awesome. Probably is much nicer on the inside too. That's a great home. But I mean, if I had to guess just based on the few comps we're looking at, I'm thinking you're at least 230. So that gives you some extra money to know that. I don't know what the inside looks like. So obviously, the inside could be 100K, it could be 40K. With 1,800 square foot, that age house, I would think that you're probably minimum 40 or 50, even if it's in pretty good shape, because you'll eat some money in a house that size and that age. But I don't know. You really have to see it. I mean, I've never had a scenario in that neighborhood with that type of house where it's been 20 or 30. I've not seen it yet.
They just put a new HVAC system in. So all the heating and air conditioning's been updated.
That's good. This is rehab, I believe. Whoa, what's going on with this one?
That's weird. That was a weird one. It's only like 4 pictures.
Dude, why didn't we buy this? We should all bought this one. What in the world?
For 122, yeah.
Needs some. I know 122. This thing looks like it's renovated.
That's the one I threw out on the other end.
Yeah, don't worry about that one. That's that's just a miss for us as investors for them to sell that. It must have been. So first of all, they're showing the good stuff, but I imagine there must be like a completely flooded basement, something going on. Yes, it says great investment property, as is, very spacious, sold as is, needs some TLC. So I'm assuming there's something that needs to be done with this because 122 is like a really low price. This is an as-is sale. So what you can look at sometimes you'll see houses that are very nice, but if they're distressed sales like an auction, a foreclosure, or a short sale, or anything that's as is, you actually can throw those out on your lower end. You don't want to put those in because distressed sales won't represent you're not going to be selling distressed. Now, the big thing right here, what would made this only not sell to a homeowner is in this particular neighborhood, a homeowner would not buy any house as is. This is an area where people have no cash, right? They're buying these homes. They're not coming in with $50K in cash. They generally are pretty much like buying these houses with like minimum amounts of money. And if the house don't have everything redone, new appliances, like move my stuff in, then they're not buying it at any price because they're not capable of buying it. Like there's not many people in this neighborhood doing a 2 or 3K loan. This is like a turnkey is what they're looking for. Like, let me just move in and, they want it to be kind of done and complete. So this is where we make money is that as soon as it's not turnkey, it instantly, just even this thing didn't need a lot. It instantly goes to the as-is market and starts selling for as-is prices. I think that's a really good price. But, for this, I would have picked this up probably if I noticed it. Whenever it was, probably wasn't looking.
So what threw me down to 210 is there's one that sold on 4800 Haddon. That was just under 2,000 square foot, 5-bedroom, 2.5. It sold for 209.
Yeah, but I would never just pick one property if that makes sense. You know what I'm getting at? Like one property, but you got like 10 others saying something better. And Haddon also is not coming up for me, which means it must have been a little farther away. So it could have been that it was next to a crack house. It could have been next to a busier street. Like that area does, like the one thing that'll affect value is like I've seen very often, you got to be very careful when you're looking at your home, what's next to you. Like, you'll just see this beautiful home. You'll go there and next door will be like an apartment complex where people are just hanging out on the porches and stuff. It's very common in that neighborhood. Or you'll just see some like chicken heads next door. Like, you can tell they're like selling drugs or anything crazy, or an abandoned house. I've seen churches next door. I mean, not churches aren't as bad, but, they don't help, right? If you got like commercial next door. So in that area, if you're next to some nice stuff, the street's a pretty quiet street, you're on a nice part of the street, you're definitely going to get the higher comps for sure. And so that's because I know we sold one on Haddon, and Haddon, by the way, is, and we got 220 for it, and it did not have a finished basement.
4802.
Yeah, we were 4802. I don't see that one either. So I think where you are is much better.
Yeah, I was just on Zillow, and I was kind of just doing that whole.
Let me look at where you are exactly. Let's see, so I can just get a feel for it. Yeah, you're Mohawk, so you're on one of these parts. So you're right in here. So you're at Bell Avenue.
Right where the house is at, right there.
It says you're 0.2 miles away from that, though. What's your address?
So I'm a little bit up by the Bell Avenue.
Bell, okay, yeah. So you're all good. I mean, that's a good, solid area, though.
Yeah.
So there's some switches, some things get less valuable, but there's Haddon over here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say at 1,800 square foot, you're definitely probably like, if you can finish the basement, there was a house across the street from me that was smaller, about 1,500 square feet, and it looked more like a Cape Cod kind of Craftsman. It went for 230, but we sold ours for like 215 and got like 220 for it, or 210 and got 220, something like that. And because we didn't have a finished basement. And we weren't the best location either. So, we had a couple doors away from an apartment building, which, was not good. So I would say you're probably 230 if you can finish the basement for sure when you get there. Sometimes the basements are finished, but they're not really finishable. You know, like
Right.
they finished them illegally or something. And when you're doing a full renovation, you might not be able to get away with that.
Okay. So I
Right.
guess I'll go Saturday and I'll just take videos and pictures and then
Take videos,
get
pictures,
some guys
man.
who fix you.
Yep. Yeah. Take some videos and pictures. Send Delonte a text. I'm going to be doing a 3-day training this weekend with a higher level group. So
Okay.
I won't be available, but he might be able to jump in, take a look at something when we come up. So
Okay.
obviously, so you know that like in your head, I mean, just looking at this picture, looks pretty well taken care of from the outside, but I'm assuming on the inside, you're probably going to sink about 50 to 60K, we might guess. And if we use 60K and call it a 230, you know in your head, let's get a range for maybe where you're going to be potentially paying probably like 80 to 120. So you just want to get a feel for that because you might have a conversation of like, hey, like what are your expectations? The reason you want to always ask what expectations are because if they're thinking they're going to get 220 for it, then you're going to have to definitely present and try to move them. But
Right.
if they're like, yeah, we know we want to get 150, then you probably can make something like that. You're in the ballpark potentially, because I've gotten people from 150 to 100 pretty easily. But your job is to present, and then it is what it is. It's what we do. We just go and do it until someone says yes. And I promise you keep doing it, someone will say yes.
Now he did bring up the houses. He goes, he knows it's a good neighborhood. Some of the houses I've seen are 300,000. Should I bring it to his attention that them houses are 2,500 square foot?
No, not really. I mean, you
Or
could
should I
bring
just leave
it,
them
you
out of the
can.
conversation?
So what I do in my appointment with them is I focus on two things. So I'm going to walk you guys through a process very quickly. And instead of doing our lesson today, we'll do our lesson on Tuesday because I have a better lesson I can give you today that's really a higher level lesson that it's going to be relevant to this and for everyone to be valuable for everyone. When you're dealing with sellers, agents, anyone, right? I have a 3-step process that I use. It's called anti-selling. Right, because I'm not naturally a salesperson. For years, I learned to be a salesperson, but I did it against my personality, right? Because I don't really like to push people into things they don't want to do, and I found that did not make me happy. I had to do it for a long time because if I didn't, I wouldn't make any money. I was like, I'm not really going to be a house flipper if I don't learn to sell. So I had to learn to sell, even though it wasn't a really, really congruent activity for me that I love to do. So with that being said, what I'm learning to do, what I've been doing for the last couple of years that's been crushing it is anti-selling. And there's really 3 steps to anti-selling for me. When we use this process, essentially we start off with qualifying people. So the reason that we qualify and we start to get people really qualifying them is like, we come from a position of like higher authority when we're qualifying, and it starts to set the tone for the conversation, if that makes sense. Because if you're not setting the tone for the conversation and you're not causing someone to answer, I think somebody's off mute. Maybe it's Steve. Steve, can you mute yourself? Because for some reason I can't mute you. You've somehow hacked past my ability to mute you. Maybe it's Nick. I don't know. Oh, cool. It's all good. Yeah, there's like a phone call or something. So ultimately, what we're doing is when we anti-sell is we start off with qualifying people. And we're qualifying someone. We put them in the position of us being at a somewhat of a higher authority. I want you to think about what the general public does when they get a phone call from a motivated seller. Like, right, keep in mind, motivated sellers are in high demand right now. And since they're in high demand, anyone who's in high demand gets empowered and they get approached very similarly by all your competitors. When that's people approaching them saying, hey, I'd like to make you an offer. I want to buy your property. I can pay cash and I can do this. They hear that same stuff over and over. And what do you need? I'll do this. I'll take and get your groceries for you. And, and I don't mind being that way. But what I do first so that I can make sure before I pour that kind of attention into someone is first I qualify them. And the reason that I qualify, because I qualify people because in general, when you qualify someone, it will cause them to really start to shift into selling you. And this is what anti-selling is. It's essentially the reverse of everything that everyone else is doing. If everyone else is coming in trying to sell and tell, oh, I've been in business for 10 years, and you come in and you're like, hey, well, look, I need to know what your house is worth. Now, we do this nicely. We're not being jerks about it because that's not going to work. But we're asking questions. We're finding out. We're making sure that, we're in a similar price range, right? That you actually have a house to sell and that, like, what do you really want for it? I need this information. And as we ask for information at some level, even demand that information, right? What we're doing is we're qualifying them. And when you start to qualify anyone, it's human instinct that person will start to sell you. And the second you've made the shift to where they're selling you and you're not selling them, there's a whole higher level of everything. by the way. And this is where anti-selling, how I've been able to take myself from like 1 in 22 phone calls down to 1 in 8. I've been able to like triple my conversion almost right now, simply by anti-selling versus selling. Now, back in the day, I used to sell, and I would go in and tell them how, you know, awesome it is. I'll get their groceries, because we were in a depressed market and no one was doing that. Everyone was like qualifying, because everyone was like, oh, I got so many deals this week, I don't even know what to do. I got 100 people calling me. So they started qualifying. So what was all my competitors doing? They were qualifying. So now that we're in this market, I qualify. I do always the opposite of what everyone's doing. Now, this works really well when I qualify, because I want you to think about the rubber band, essentially, right? If you take a rubber band, you stretch it out, right? You hold it there for a really long time. Eventually, you want to come back to that, you know, that normal state, right? The rubber band's natural state. Whenever we're qualifying someone, it creates a little bit of a break in rapport, and it ultimately it'll take the rubber band and stretch it out. And when it's stretched out, people naturally want the rubber band to go back to its natural state. So when you qualify someone, and you start with qualifying and anti-selling, which is the first step of anti-selling, then what's going to happen is when it comes time to build rapport with them, they're going to be really open to you building rapport, because they want the rubber band not to be stretched out again. They want it back to its natural state. They want to have, you know, they want to have commonality with you. They want to engage with you and build rapport with you, because you're actually softening them up for that. This is a really amazing negotiation tactic. I use it commonly when I've ever gotten in lawsuits, you know, where mediation is, we always start off hot and heavy arguing, and then always at some point, the rubber band gets stretched out for a really long period of time, and I can sense people deflating, and then we have a reasonable conversation about how we can come to a common ground and make them happy, make me happy, and everyone's good, and we move on. We usually never go to court because of this, but it starts with stretching the rubber band out, and me being willing to get very confrontational or get very qualifying for, you know, some period of time. Now, if the person you're talking to is a pleasure to talk to, you don't need to stretch the rubber band, because you got what you need. They're going to be easy to build rapport with. When we qualify someone is when they are not being very cooperative and friendly, right? Remember, we said people have to be cooperative and friendly, the 5-star rating. If they're not doing the things we need, then we qualify them until they do, until we stretch the rubber band out till they can't take it anymore. Now, once we know they're in a place where they're ready to build rapport, like either they just might be there from the second they call you on the phone. Most aren't though, but when they are ready to be built rapport with, then we start building rapport, all the things I've taught you in all the other phone calls. You know, having a conversation with them, figuring out what they need, really getting deep with them on like what their needs, their expectations are, you know, what would be important about my offer, all the things you've heard before. That's when we start building rapport. Now, at the end of qualifying someone and then building rapport and gathering information that we need, our close is what I call the reverse close. Okay. I don't ever close anyone, right? You're never going to hear a sales tactic or some used car thing like, you know, look, I got money for 8 minutes, and if you don't make a decision, you're going to lose it now, but only now because I really like you, Scott. I'm going to pay you 110. Normally I'd only pay 80 for it, but I'm going to give it to you for 110, but only now if you make a decision this minute. You got to sign right here, or I'm going to leave and I'm taking my offer with me. Right? I'm not doing all that.
Done.
No, Scott likes it. Yeah, well, Scott's a fish, so he's easy, man. Most of them are tougher than Scott. Apparently, he would be great to buy a house from. We like Scott, but most of the time, like people used to go for that because they were desperate and they didn't have options, and so they would go for that because they came from a place of, you know, scarcity. They're worried about like, well, if I don't buy it from Nick, or Nick doesn't, I don't sell it to Nick, then will there be another buyer? Well, guess what? People don't worry about that these days because they probably got 15 postcards. They've probably seen 10 bandit signs, right? They're probably getting all kind of stuff. So they're being bombarded by other marketers. So what we do instead is once we've built rapport, and the fastest way to build rapport is be authentic and transparent. So as we're building rapport, we're showing them the comps, right? First, we start with like, here's a couple comps. We'll show them a few of the solds that are like theirs that sold in as-is condition. Probably even show them that 122, right? And be like, look how good a condition this house was in at 122, right? We're going to show them that because like that tells me that this house must be worth less. Right? I mean, that's the way I would think about it. Hey, it was the same square footage, same house, you know, 122,000. You know, so what we're doing is we're going to start showing them the comps. Then we're going to show them our renovation budget, show them how much we're going to put in it. And then we pull that deal analyzer out and we're like, look, based on this, we're going to make X dollars. You know, obviously if you were, you know, doing this house, I know you'd want to make a little bit of money also, right? If you were investing X amount of dollars into a house, everyone always says yes. And as we are very transparent, we're showing them how much we're putting in and all that. And we got to get buy-in every step of the way, by the way. So we show them the comps, we got to get them to buy into those comps. So we never tell them, right? When I say show, There's a big difference in tell and show, right? Telling them would be like, look, the house around the corner sold for, you know, you're saying sold for 300, was 2,500 square feet. So the reason we don't do that is we'd be telling them, right? And anytime we tell people something, what do you naturally want to do? We naturally want to be like, no, that's not right, right? We want to fight it. So what we do is we never tell people. What we do is I'll say something along the lines of like, hey, Nick, you know, I know you told me there's some houses sold for 300. And I went and did a little bit of research, and I seen some of the houses that were in as-is condition like yours. I'd like to share them with you because you probably know the neighborhood better than me. And I would love you to give me some feedback and tell me what you think, like how your house compares to those. Would you be okay doing that? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Usually like, sure. Well, look, this house at 123 Main Street, you can see this one went for like $98,000. Looks in similar condition to yours. Are you familiar with that house? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I've seen it before, but I've never been in it. Well, here's some pics. You know, you can see the inside. It's in pretty similar condition to yours. So it looks pretty much like yours. Do you agree this house is pretty similar to yours? Now, we never try to get them to agree to price. We're only getting them to agree that the house is the same as theirs and sold for 98K. The 98K thing, we don't need to argue because that's factual. But what we want to agree is that, like, do you feel like this house is as good as yours? And if they say no, well, tell me why. Like, hey, well, yeah, awesome. Well, explain, what do you feel like the differences are? I want to make sure I don't miss it. You see how we're more asking them? What we want them to do is start educating us on the comps. And then if we never talk about the number, because if I can get them to agree that 98K, it's the same house, then I get them 2 more comps and say it's 105, maybe 92. And then I come to them and say, look, well, based on what things are selling for, you've seen the 3 houses, you said they were just like yours. You know, I'd be making you an offer about 110K, which is higher than what the other 3 sold for, by the way, you know, because I am known for paying the most money. And would that work for you? Is what I say to them. Would that work for you? And if they're like, no, I was really hoping to do this, this, and this, okay, well, you know, then we start into our negotiation. We have a conversation. But what we're doing is we never talk about the price until they've agreed upon the comps and they've agreed upon how much money we're putting in, and they've seen what we're, you know, what we're going to make and all that. We're all good with that. We're very transparent. We show them all those things and they agree to them. Well, then we start talking price. Because see, we never, ever want to take and like, well, we need to set the table before we eat dinner. Think of it like that, right? We don't want to be closing people. We want to what I call reverse closing. Reverse closing is, well, I literally say to them, after I show them all that data, what I found is half the time they close themselves, because most of the time they start to come to their own conclusion. They'll start saying things like, well, wow, based on that, it looks like our house is only worth about 100K. And I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, that's about where it is. Now, I might be able to make you a little stronger offer than that, but is that something you would even consider? You know, so that's how we're like letting them close themselves. And that's why I call this the reverse close, because we're not in there closing and pressuring them. We're just leading them down the path to the water until they can come to a conclusion. Because let me just tell you, this is not like trying to sell somebody a water heater, or coming in and saying, trying to sell somebody a window or something like a home improvement. We're talking about like a really big transaction for people. And so you're not generally going to convince them to do anything, right? They got to see some data and have some factual stuff to back up what you're saying in order for them to sell it to you, unless they're very super desperate, which some people are super desperate and they'll just, whatever you say, just take anything. But that's pretty rare these days, right? Most of the time we're dealing with people who have a little motivation, and our job is to create the motivation, get them on board, and set expectations and educate them. So when we do it this way, where we qualify first and then we build really great rapport with them so they trust and like us and want to do business with them, we gather the information we need, and then we reverse close them by allowing them to close themselves, then we often will find that like, you don't really need to be a great salesperson. Like as a matter of fact, I would say if you came to me and you're like, oh, I'm an awesome car salesman, I'd be like, wow, we got a little bit of work to do. All right. If you come to me and you're like, I hate sales, I'm like, oh, cool. This would be easy then. You'll love what I do. It's like, we don't sell anything. Because first of all, we're not selling anything. Let's be honest. We're bringing a big bag of money to them and solving a problem and saving them a bunch of commission they would have to give an agent. One of those evil agents who steal all your money in commissions. Scott knows. He does it every day for a living. I'm just messing with you, but me too sometimes. Like that's what they think. I mean, if they're calling us, usually they don't want to call an agent. So if they liked agents or thought agents would be perfect for this house, they probably would already call it an agent. usually much easier to find an agent than it is to find, Nick's bandit sign essentially, or me on, wherever they find me or anyone else in this group. So you can get the point of how we handle this. And when we do reverse selling, anti-selling is really big. And it's my secret trick to why, first of all, it's my secret trick to making this whole thing freaking easy. Because I think, and there's probably some people in here that like selling, but I would imagine most of you guys don't really want to be a salesperson. You don't want to be real salesy. You don't want to be pushy. You probably just want to get the house, right? And this is what I've created so I can get the house without doing something that isn't fun for me, right? This has really been, when I figured this out, like my whole business skyrocketed from the point that I figured this out about 2.5, 3 years ago. And it was because I stopped following others and listening to what others were telling me, and I started making my own rules. And I realized that, like, you know what, I'm never going to naturally be a guy that's pushy and demanding and telling people, like, sell me the house and this, and then, let's sign right now. I'm not going to leave, stay here. I mean, I've met people like that. It's just not me, unfortunately. So, but with that being said, if I would have had that ability, I'd still be doing that today. And honestly, I wouldn't even be doing nothing near at the level I'm doing it now. Because see, this is actually more congruent with about 98% of people are not really looking to pushy sell, but you certainly could be a consultant, right? You can go in there and be helpful, right? You can help educate them and show them some stuff. That's pretty easy. It's pretty fun. You can't really get it wrong is the next best part. So if you go in there, you make a mistake, you show them the wrong comp, just take the right comps with you and you say all the wrong stuff. It ain't a big deal because you're doing a little bit of the talking. You're asking intelligent questions and they're doing all the talking. It really lets you off the hook and takes a lot of pressure off of you. Right? You just let them start going. You just do a great job of listening. That's all. You just listen. When the conversation runs out, you ask another question. You just keep listening.
Cool. Hey, Mike, do you print out comps and bring them with you, or do you have an iPad with you? How do you do that?
I usually print the comps out because, there's only going to be a couple of really good comps, and I'll take comps. I'll be more aggressive. I'll go 1,000 days back. I'll go, half mile out. I'm looking for the comps that are going to help, like, really paint the picture for me a little bit, because there's going to be in that neighborhood, there's going to be a couple cheap solds, right? There's going to be like 2 or 3 houses that sold for pretty cheap. And we want to show him, even if he disagrees, we've planted a seed. And he's like, well, my house is nicer than that $88,000 one. All right, cool. Yeah, I agree. It is. Right. We're not there to argue price. We're only there to get, well, about how much nicer do you feel like it is, Scott? And, if you were to price it, about how much difference, right? So we're just we're letting them tell us everything. See, when they tell us, it's the second they tell us anything, it's set in stone, right? It's gold. We tell them stuff. We have to prove it. We have to fight it. We have to just keep working at it until they finally will be convinced, right? So that's why I don't believe in convincing people. I can believe in leading them to their own beliefs. I help educate them in their own beliefs.
Right.
When we do that, it's a very high level. And it also works really well as a listing agent, by the way. So, you go in there and tell them all the reasons they should work with you. That's the old way of doing it. But if you show them comps, you show them comparables based on these, where do you think your house would be priced well at? Because you did say you need to sell it in the next 30 to 40 days. You don't want it sitting on the market too long. And they're like, well, we think this, but this other agent told us it would sell for 30K more than that. Oh, wow. Yeah. I see that a lot of time where agents still say really high numbers so they can get the listings. What do you guys think, though, based on what you've seen? Like, what's your gut telling you?
Right.
Oh, they're like, well, my gut's telling me that guy was talking out his butt. Yeah, because he actually was, right? And you need to move in the next 40 days. So if you overprice this, what's going to happen, right? You're going to sit on the market. And is that what you want? So you can use it as an agent, but you can use it with contractors, by the way. I mean, anti-selling is used all the way across the board. It's a great way to it's a process that I use when I'm dealing with contractors, when I'm selling my houses, everything. Vendors, if you got the lunch, maybe, I don't know. Because if you're constantly trying to tell people why they should want to work with you, or why they would want to do business with you, then they just naturally, instinctually don't want to believe you. That's where we are today in our society, unfortunately, because of all the offers we get every day, all the marketing it's shoved down our throat, all the things that are being sold to us every second of the day on Facebook, TV, billboards, everywhere we go, telemarketers blowing our phone up every day. We've been pushed into being very, very skittish, and our sales walls are easily put up these days. So we don't do sales anymore. Now, this is some really high level stuff I'm sharing with you. There's a very few people in the country that believe this or even understand this. I mean, there's dudes right now that I know that are paying a guy named John Martinez $3,000 a month to teach them sales. And I'm not saying what he's teaching is wrong or bad. I'm just saying that it's at best like just able to get you deals, but it's not the Yoda level, right? The Yoda level can be learned much faster, and the results are something that, like, John Martinez's best students are getting 1 in 20, where I can get 1 in 8 with this. And I've had students getting 1 in 10, 1 in 15, 1 in 9, getting super, and they're nowhere near as smart or well-versed, or they haven't practiced scripts every day for 2 years. Like John Martinez students, like, they're smart. Like, they can, man, you hear them, you're like impressed because they know everything to say to everything. But what do you think people think about that these days? What do you guys feel when you hear someone that's too polished, right? And someone that sounds like, you've heard what he said before, and it sounds like you start to compartmentalize those things. You say, oh, that sounds like that car salesman I seen on a movie, right? That was too slick sounding. So that's why I go in. I mean, I'll go to appointments in a t-shirt and jeans and just go in. I'm very natural. I speak like them, and just somebody like you, Scott, like me, you're a lot alike, right? And then, by the way, that's true. It's no bullshit. I didn't create that to be, good at getting houses. I did that because it's really natural and easy, and people respect authenticity. I could not say that. Authenticity. Okay, that was too much. That was too big of a word. See, even saying that big of a word is not authentic for me. People like people that are real. I gotta say it like I normally would say it. And they try to pull out a big word, and I failed. So that's why you don't pull big words out. Because see, you're talking to someone that can't read or write or has got an 8th grade education. Our customer avatar are older people, usually 50 and above. Generally a little bit older. And, people that are older, school wasn't as big of a thing back then. So, are not likely as educated. And, so you want to use small words. You want to just be yourself, right? Be authentic. If you're authentic, you're trustworthy, right? If you have the heart to be who you are when you're with people, then they're going to trust you. They're not going to care about your flaws. They're actually going to love you because you're willing to share your flaws, and they're going to trust you, and you're different. I think people right now hate people that are too polished and too perfect. So yeah, for all of us who are working on being perfect, well, good news, you don't have to be anymore. It's kind of cool not to be perfect right now. What a great time we live in. I feel like, at least. Like when you actually win for being like, yeah, I kind of used to be a mess up, right? I dropped out of school. People are like, cool, you shared that. I mean, I don't know. 20 years ago, you couldn't get away with that. I feel like 20 years ago, you probably would have been like, not, I don't know, it was a thing, right? People were expected to be perfect. Now people know no one's perfect. And like when they see that, what do you think they're feeling when Scott says, hey, you know what? I'm just like you and just a normal guy. They're like really relieved that, like, oh, wow, someone like me, I can be me with you. So you win at a big level because they feel comfortable to share with you, by the way, too. Because see, the people like sharing stuff with people like them. Now, my old mentor, when I was new to this, and I did this for about the first 4 or 5 years I was in business, he wore a suit and tie to everything. Like, and I eventually always felt like that didn't feel right. So then I started going down to a pants and a dress shirt with no tie and no suit jacket, and that worked fine. And next thing you know, like, my shirt wasn't clean one day, so I went in with some dress pants and maybe like a polo shirt, and that seemed to work fine. And then one day I got a really good lead, and I went there straight from like a job, and I had on like some clothes because I was out helping in a rehab, and that worked fine. I was like, that worked even better. And I was like, okay, no one cares about this stupid suit. The suit might even be probably making me look like a goofball, because it's not many people we talk to have suit and ties. Pretty rare. Working class, right? We're working with the working class, just average Joes, essentially. And that's who we want to be like. So and I'm sure, Nick, if I had to guess who your customer avatar is, it's probably exactly that, right? Probably an older gentleman, probably a working class person. You probably didn't get like, he's somebody like a rocket science guy. I mean, he's probably just a normal dude, right? Normal job, pretty average person would be my guess. And usually a little older, by the way, because younger guys don't usually have any equity. I wonder what we're going to do 30 years from now when there is no older people who actually used to have equity in their house. Like 30 years from now, it's going to be all these millennials who like buy and sell houses every 5 years. So they never have, 40 years later, they've owned 13 houses and they never have equity. That might be our biggest fear in this real estate market. Of course, then we'll just buy those when they're just like, here, bank, we'll buy them from the banks when they're giving them back. So it's all good, man. Well, I'm sure we'll find a way. It's never going to be, this opportunity will never disappear. It might need to adjust it. So anyhow, the reverse selling, so what feedback does anybody in the group on the reverse selling? Or what do you guys know about selling? Does anybody have like a sales tactic they've heard or disliked or anything about what we just talked about that you genuinely think's like, okay, that's a little different take than I've heard. I kind of like where you're going with that.
Oh, I've heard one.
Yeah, good.
I've heard like during the phone call, once they say the price, you wait and then you say ouch or something like that.
Oh yeah, you say ouch.
Yeah, they're like ouch.
Uh-huh. That's
I
good.
don't know. I feel like that tactic kind of makes the seller feel like shit because like they're like, well, is it not worth that much? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's definitely a rapport breaker, but I just don't know
Yep.
if it's like the
Ouch.
function of it.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly.
200. Ooh. Ouch. So I'm sad to say, but I've used that in the past, by the way. And when I was new, I used that one because it was taught to me, and it never felt good. And I kind of just naturally went away from it eventually, and it then not being in my arsenal. And I'm not saying it doesn't work. You know, 7 years ago when we were in a depressed market and people were desperate to sell, you could do things like that, and people wouldn't run off. Now, if you said that to someone, and since they're so bombarded with so many people who want to do business with them, they would assume you just aren't that interested in their deal, right? They would start to have lower confidence about Delante because Delante, if he was kind of talking crap about my house, I don't generally like you, man, because he's like kind of like I said a price, and he was like, being confrontational. Where this other guy, Nick, got on the phone, and I liked him, right? He was qualifying, but in a very genuinely nice way, right? He wasn't being mean. So I'm really against now doing the ouch, the ooh, ah. Like I'm pretty against that now because what I found is that if I am too hard on anyone about price on the phone, what they'll do is they stop answering my calls. And Dante, you might have actually seen that where like you get, right, it's hard to get people back on the phone. Like they call and we talk to them and they'll set appointments. You never see them again because probably someone else got them on the phone and maybe got out there sooner or maybe said something that enticed them more. So me and Delante were training, and our script is anytime we end any phone call with someone, we say to everyone, regardless of what they want, is like, hey, I really feel like, it was great talking with you, Nick. And it was a lot, we really have a lot in common. And, honestly, when I come out there, I'm really excited and very, very positive about potentially being able to buy your house from you. So I really think we're going to be able to work this out, right? So what am I doing? I'm giving them hope. Why do I want to give them hope? I'm not agreeing to their price by giving them hope. I just want to give them hope so they're not like, if I was to do the opposite and kill their hope, then what are they going to do? They're going to go into their little pile of cards that they got sitting on their counter, from the 9 people that sent them letters, and they're going to start calling other people, right? And when they call someone else and they sound more enthusiastic about buying the house, they're going to sell it to them, and they're going to not return your phone call. So yeah, I didn't invent this tactic. This is just what happens to me and Delante, or in Rashad also when he was working with me, and Dave before that, and any of my salespeople. If we don't inspire them to really believe that like we'll probably get this done with you. Now the reason I used to be afraid to do that in the past is like I felt like if I told them I was very hopeful we could do a deal together and we'd be able to get this done, I always felt like I was saying, hey, I'll be able to pay that goofy number you want. But I realize now one doesn't have anything to do with the other, right? If you tell them I'm hopeful, like I'm feeling really confident that when I come out, Scott, me and you're going to be able to work something out, get this deal done. So we'll set an appointment for Tuesday, but know that we should be able to work this out. I should be able to get this off your hands, and that way you get to Florida and get down to your the golf course or retirement like you wanted to, right? So if I say something like that to them, they're way less likely to ever call any of the other numbers. And you know what else they actually do, Delante, which is really cool, is if they were already called 2 or 3 other people and then those people call them back, they often won't answer because they're already like, oh, Scott's got me, right? People don't want to, like, people are pretty monogamous when it comes to this, in general. They don't want to deal with 800 people. If they really like Scott, they'll want to work with Scott. But if Delante was a little bit, so Delante might call back from a message, and he's like, well, no one will answer. So when you don't get people answering Delante, often what's happened is, well, they were either not motivated to start with, or they talked to someone else who scratched that itch, right? They had an itch and someone else scratched it. So now they don't have an itch. So when Delante calls, they're like, oh, I don't need to talk to him. You know what I mean? I'm not itching anymore. So that's why it's important when we get on the phone. Well, another thing that's important is that when we get calls from our marketing, any kind of marketing, that we're very quick about it. Ideally, if we can answer it right away or get right on the phone and call them, that would be amazing. Secondarily, when we get on the phone with them, our job is by the end of the phone call is to build confidence with them that we're going to be the answer to their problems. Okay. And if we can do that, then we're going to really get a high level of getting this done, getting people to meet us. So yeah, the ouch thing. Yeah, man, I did it before. So, I mean, I'm a proponent of it, and also a secondary thing that I think similar to the ouch, people used to walk through the house and talk crap about the house. I think like Jay Scott actually talked about that in one of his books. And it was like, yeah, you go through and you make sure you point out all the bad things. My experience has been when you point out all the bad things, they think you're a jerk. because they're like, this is my mom's house. And like, you know what? It's got good bones and it's so beautiful. My mom lived here. We grew up here. See, the rule is they're allowed to be negative about their house, but you do not have permission. So just know that. Never talk anything bad about their home. Be super positive. Say, oh, it's a beautiful home. I could tell it used to be great back in the day. And yeah, I can't wait. I'm very excited to potentially renovate it and maybe buy it from you. I can just see how beautiful it'll be again. That's all I ever. Never like, oh, that roof's going to cost 18,000. Those cracks over there look serious. And man, this thing's really a dump. I mean, think about it. Like, you're offending their parents' home, and they do usually have an emotional tie to it. So yeah, you're not really you're not winning any brownie points with them for sure when you do that. So I don't do the ouch, and I don't do the talk crap about your house thing. It's a very old school tactic. I have done it in the past, however. I've just evolved into a new way of doing things because the market has required it. So my old way of doing it, I never liked. So I'm actually pretty excited about this new way of doing things, because the old way sucked really bad for me, but I just did it because it was all I knew. Sometimes we do what we think's right, and it was what was taught to me to be right by a bunch of sales coaches. So now anti-selling. It's the time of anti-selling. And here's what's really cool for everyone in this group. And I was talking to somebody, I don't remember who I was talking this about, but when I started to say it, I realized how awesome it was. And I never really thought of it like this, but right now we're probably one of the best times to flip houses that we've seen in many, many years. And the reason why is because in every market, there's always this shift that happens, right? There's always this evolution of how things are done. And right now we're at the very beginning of an evolution. And the best time is when there's an evolution of how things are done, is if you're on the forefront of it. Like right now, when I'm talking to you guys about anti-selling, you're on the complete forefront of that, right? It works. Every single person I've ever taught it to is like, been like, dude, I've literally doubled my sales. And, I don't teach it to 1 million people. And I might go on a Facebook Live and talk about it, but there's only 800 people in the group. And honestly, like, 786 of them won't pay attention or even listen to me. So it's not like a big thing. So, it's not like I'm teaching it to everyone. Now, you people, everyone that's in this group, right, the family, you guys are going to learn this and follow it, and you're going to be part of the 1%. See, for every one of you guys who are doing it, or somebody in the group is doing it, then there's going to be like 20 people not doing it. So this is like, you're at like the cusp of one of the biggest opportunities in house flipping, because see, you're on the right side of it. You're in the evolution. You're on the right side of the evolution. Now, what's going to happen 5 years from now is, instead of 1% of people doing all the right things in their house flipping business, there's going to be 10%. The opportunity will still be there, because there's that 90% that's still not doing it. But the opportunity shrinks over time, right? And then eventually what's going to happen is like 89, it's going to be the way things are done. And see, when you get to the point where it's the way things are done, well, obviously, if you were doing it 20 years earlier, then you'll be the OG of how things are done. So it's no big deal, but, it won't be as big of an opportunity as it is right now. So we literally are sitting in one of the biggest opportunities. Everyone else focuses on, well, the economy's almost to this, we're almost to that. Like, none of that matters when you're the 1%. None of that matters. Like, the 1% never talks about markets crashing, anything. My old mentor was the 1%. And he told me that there's no such thing as a good or bad market. There's only different ways to invest. It was I probably don't quote him for anything but that one thing, because it was the most ingenious thing I've ever heard. And it's super true. 10 years later, I believe it. I've seen it. Every big, really amazing house flipper, old school dude I've spent time with is all said the same thing. They don't care about ups and downs. They just care that they're the best at what they do. And the ups and downs only affect the top. Well, let's say the ups and downs only affect the bottom 30% of the community. So, if there's 10 house flippers, there's the 3 worst are the ones that go first. And then the next 3 are the ones that get shooken up a little bit, right? The ones that have a little bit of a rough time. The bottom 3, that are the 3 best, they barely are even affected, right? They see a little, okay, things sit on the market, I had to do some price reductions, but they're not like, yeah, we just had 6 months and lost money, or we didn't make any money. They're just making a little less money until they quickly evolve, because they're the best at what they do. So you guys, everyone in this group, I keep saying you guys, but the family here, right? The whole mastermind, the upper level group, you're on the cusp of something really big. I mean, I've spent a lot of money putting this together so that I could be part of the 1%, because I desperately never want to do anything but this. I mean, it's good for everyone here that I have a desperate fear of never doing anything but flipping, because I don't have any other options. And I can never see doing anything but this, because this is my thing. So I make sure I'm the absolute best at it, and that I never fall out of the top 1 or 2%. That's why I do all the coaching with my coaches, and I'm constantly studying and reading and learning to share all this with you. So yeah, I'm excited about it, man. You probably hear in my voice, like I'm really pumped about it, because I kind of didn't recognize the opportunity until I was talking to someone about it. And then they were like, dude, this is huge. What they gave me an analogy of was, about 10 years ago, one of my students and friends, a guy named Steve Daneman, he took second place in the World Series of Poker. And Daneman, he, was in Vegas, lost some money, was sitting by the pool waiting to play his World Series of Poker, which cost $10,000 to get in. He won a seat to get in. So, he didn't even pay for it. And he read this book by Dan Harrington, who was this very old school guy who wins, but, he plays this old school poker style of winning tournaments. And he literally followed it like word for word. And he went and took second place for over $5 million with this very basic poker playing system. Now, Daneman obviously wins $5 million. He's like, I'm going to be a professional poker player. It's all going to be great. And what happened to Daneman, unfortunately, a year later is the internet shut down, and all the real good poker players were on the internet and live. Nobody live was very good. They were all using this very outdated system, but it was working for so long because they didn't have a very high level of competition. Now, the people who were super good at it were these guys on the internet, these little, I call them little wizards or trolls. They remind me of both. They're super smart. They were like grand chess master players. They literally understood what's called game theory optimal. And when you hear me talk about game theory, the reason I'm very good at it is I used to play poker and I studied game theory so I could start winning again at poker. Because when there was a change in poker, I had to actually upgrade my poker playing, or I would keep losing forever and hating myself. So I started reading books and learning, and I've realized there was a more optimal way to play poker. And these little wizards, they were like 18 years old. They were online, and they had these poker tracker things where they could literally track thousands of hands, and they could know the math and know the optimal play for every scenario, where they could never put themselves in what's called a negative expectation situation, right? They never would have a negative value, essentially, right? They would always be in a positive value situation. So once they got pushed into live play because online shut down, nobody ever won with the old way of playing ever again. Like, so it's been 13 years, 2005, like 13, 14 years. There's been nobody to win, an amateur like Daneman, or like the guy who won the year before was an amateur, forgot his name, Chris Moneymaker. He was easy name to remember. Like nobody, like just average Joes, won again because they had the superior system. So what you're learning right now is the superior system. Now, for years, all the people online crush poker because they come into this little pond with this awesome system, and winning money was just like taking candy from a baby, because they were using this system that was just so far advanced over the existing system that everybody had been using for 40 years that it was like taking candy from a baby. But what happens when people flood a market with an amazing system? Well, guys like me and a lot of other people who are survivors start learning. So now if you were to go play poker at Maryland Live or something, like 8 out of 10 people at the table understand game theory optimal, right? Where before it was 1 out of 10 understood it, sometimes 1 out of 100, right? Now 8 out of 10. So now it's very hard to win money at poker. And there is no next level of learning because these little wizards and trolls figured it all out. They hacked the game, right? They understand like how to beat it. Now, the only people that you actually make money from is the 2 people who just haven't studied and don't learn and play recreational. But from a professional standpoint, the professionals all play really well now, and the amateurs play pretty good too. So poker is a really tough gig, and Daneman's never won since, obviously, because he's never learned the new way of playing poker, and he just resists to do it. He doesn't even really like poker that much, honestly. He loves flipping houses, but he's not really a big fan of poker. Even though he won a bunch of money at it. Beyond that, the fact that he's kind of like a little bit of a celebrity, because like he goes to casinos and they're like, oh, Mr. Daneman, they like give him free tables and food and stuff. And, because he is like, people know he's there. He's still kind of like a celebrity because he was on TV a bunch. But, he's done a bunch of cool stuff. But he never wins. He's the worst poker player at the table, by the way, because he's never evolved. And this is where house flippers who are today are not evolving are going to be 10 years from now. If they're not switching over to this more optimal way of running a business, making these really drastic changes to the way they think, they're just never going to win again, right? I mean, when I say they're never going to win, it doesn't mean they couldn't flip a house. It only means they're going to always be fighting against the current. They're always going to be working super hard to get deals. They're going to be losing deals to their competitors. They're going to be losing deals to many of you guys in the family, everyone here. Like, you guys are going to be stealing deals from them all the time, and they're just going to hate it, honestly. They're just going to, everything's going to be really hard for them. And they're going to go on like, Facebook groups and talk about the MLS is dead, that marketing doesn't work anymore. It's too tough out there. I don't know how anybody makes money. Well, that's all good. I'm glad they're there still. But, you for every time I say something like I'm saying, there's 99 people who are like, none of that's true. But there's not a single person who's crushing it who will disagree. That's all that really matters, right? We don't ever want to take advice from someone who is not in the business, someone who's not successful in the business. My favorite thing is on Facebook when someone will ask me a question and this chicken head will jump in and be like, yeah, that doesn't work. And I'd be like, cool, man. Are you like, what are you doing? Like, well, I'm not actually in the game right now. I was like, okay, then maybe you should see, A/B conversation, see your way out of here, right? Like, what are you talking about? You're not in the game. Then why are you giving advice saying something's not working? And I know they're only saying it because, in their limited experience, they tried it and it didn't work. So they make the assumption it doesn't work at all. But I'm always asking the question, like, is anyone making it work? Does anyone ever, able to do this? And if the case is yes, then how? Right. And I want to know about that. And that's where everyone here should be, right? Everyone in this group should be like very question based, very like curious and like, how could we make something work? So this comes up with renovation costs, by the way, too. So a lot of times people tell me like, oh, you can't do that for 70K. It's 90K. And these are like experienced renovators, by the way. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I'm not lying about it. Like, you want to see my last, like, I've only done 800 deals and I was over budget on the first couple hundred here and there, but like in the last few hundred, I haven't really been over budget. I'm not saying there wasn't a few, but like for the most part, that's not even a concern in my business. It's not something I've gotten around that fact, right? Because I stopped believing for many years. I believed being over budget was just part of the game. So when I accepted that belief, I got it. As soon as I accepted that I never need to be over budget and that's not something that I accept, well, guess what I got? I started getting houses on budget. As soon as I accepted that, things don't need to take 3 months, I started getting things done in the timeline I believed. Like even down to doing 1 in 7 days. We did 2 in 7 days, matter of fact, because like whatever you decide is what you'll get. So if you think something's 100K, it'll be 100K. Now, with that being said, there is a little area, right? That what I'm teaching you is that perfect area where if say you say it's $70,000 and I'm like, yeah, that's probably 70, Scott. Well, I'm really teaching you the most optimal area to be where you can still easily find contractors to do the work. Now, I'm not telling you couldn't do it for 50 because I've seen people do it for 50. But what 50 would require is you getting out there and you really interviewing like a lot of people, maybe you managing some like daily guys at $150 a day. It would require resourcefulness to get it done for 50, like a lot of resourcefulness. And if you currently have a full-time job, I'm probably not going to make that recommendation to you because I don't want you to put yourself in a corner where you would have to be that resourceful. But at 70, you can afford to actually pay people that know what they're doing. You're not going to get a high-end contractor, but you're going to have to manage them some. It's the perfect balance between the two. But at 90, you're just overpaying. Does that make sense? When you pay 90, you're just leaving money on the table. So, no, that's how we roll with everything. What's up, everyone? Hey, Glory.
Hi.
Somebody answer their phone. It sounds important. I like the phone ring. Somebody's got to upgrade their phone ring from 2004. Because I'm telling you, that one's been out of style for a while. Gotta get me like a cool song popping up or something. So who has some questions? I know Delonte, thanks for that, for jumping in and sharing that, because that's some pretty cool stuff that it kind of took me back a little bit. The whole ouch. Yeah, I could see why people would teach that, but that's really old school.
I actually have some questions.
Sure, go ahead, man.
So I noticed like driving for dollars is like, something that's, I guess, like people are seeing results with. So with the whole driving for dollars thing, in regards to getting in contact with the seller, what are your thoughts on like using, regular yellow mail versus using something like lumpy mail? Because like if it's a house that we see, we can assume that there's like more priority for it. Not priority, but like there's more of a chance that it's a higher star lead because like the house is already physically distressed. So it kind of makes sense to put more money into the marketing for just those specific properties. You're not going to have a million of them. So like, what would you like? Is that something that you would use lumpy mail on?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think, and I'm surprised we didn't think of that. But the only reason I don't use lumpy mail is the cost of it, and the only if you do it yourself, you have to do it personally. So I always like to send things to a mail house and let them do everything for me. But when we're talking about driving for dollars, you're only sending 20 pieces of mail out. If you're doing them yourself, it's pretty easy to go to Home Depot or I mean Office Depot and buy a big bag of candies and throw a candy in each thing. Or something else that's cool, right? I don't know, any like a little toy or something. And so I love lumpy mail. Lumpy mail, here's the facts behind lumpy mail. It's going to probably get double to triple the conversion rate. The issue is it costs about 3 to 4 times more if you pay a company to do it. If you do it yourself, it only costs like 10 cents more because you're just throwing in like a little 10-cent object and it's no big deal. Does that make sense? So, but it means you have to do every letter yourself. Now, when driving for dollars, most people are doing every letter themselves because it's not a lot of letters. So yeah, man, I'm glad you mentioned that because throwing something in is definitely going to get your conversion rate up because it's lumpy. Now it's different. It's standing out. Don't throw anything too big in or they won't let you send it for the same postage. So if it gets too big, they're going to deny you. So just know that like, don't throw like old stuff from your house in there or anything. But usually I was doing like a little mint and I would get like a big thing of mints from, or anything like that. It's pretty cool. You throw a business card in there, anything.
Okay. So you recommend something small like a mint or like a little candy or something.
I think like the mint size is about as big as you can get before they'll start rejecting you, and you'll have to pay like a bunch more shipping, which would make it not worth it probably. So yeah, anything smaller in a mint. I mean, throw 10 cents in there. I don't care. Throw a dime in there. Throw some extra stuff out of your house in there. I don't know. Fork. No, not probably a fork.
Yeah. Some people I've seen like on the YouTube videos, they'll do like a money bag or like a message in a bottle, something like that quirky.
Yeah.
You think you have to get that over the top or just
Well,
like,
that's expensive though. So I mean, you do the message in the bottle, that's expensive. That's not cheap. So I
yeah.
don't know if I go that crazy. I would say the simplest answer to your question is to do something simple. It wouldn't really drive your costs up that much. But if you're driving for dollars and you're really picking the right homes, it's not far fetched to invest a little more money in it. But with that being said, most people who are doing just sending any letter are getting results when they drive for dollars. So you might not need to make it more complicated other than, if you were writing them yourself or doing it yourself, you could throw something small in and it wouldn't really take any extra time or money to do. And it would help your conversion rate considerably. I've seen the ones, you remember the ones we did, I remember we got Alex to do them. Well, they definitely got double the conversion rate, but, I kind of ran out of someone to do it. So that was the problem. You run out of manpower eventually or labor, people willing to be like in a sweatshop filling your letters out. But if it's like 20 numbers, it's no big deal. But remember, we had like 1,500. That's like too many.
It makes sense.
Cool. Who else has some questions? They're good questions. Thanks, Lante. You're on fire today, man.
Getting prepared.
I know. Like, even though you're only 8 foot from me all day, he's like, I wait for the mastermind to ask questions. But they're helpful questions. So thank you for waiting for them because yeah, a lot of times me and Delante talk about a lot of cool stuff and it's awesome when he asks them here. So you guys actually can hear what he's saying and what we're talking about because it's valuable. Hey, Justin, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, Mike?
Not much.
Hey, so as far as your letters, who do you use as far as your yellow letters?
Yellow Letters HQ and Yellow Letters Complete. Yeah, they're probably the best too. They got some different minimums and stuff like that. So you want to look into that because it's depending on how many you're sending out. One's better if you send more. One's better if you send less.
Okay, and you usually change them up as far as like the envelopes and all of that?
I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, right now, Yellow Letters are getting a little overused, but I'm still getting a really good response rate with them. Right when we and Delante checked these about, I don't know, what week or two ago, it wasn't very long ago, and we actually were getting almost the same overall ROI on big postcards, Yellow Letters, and professional letters. So they were all working about the same. Now, when I say about the same, if I send out a postcard, it was getting half the phone calls, but it was costing half the money. So that means it works the same. Does that make sense? If you spend 50 cents and you get 2 phone calls, it's just as good as spending $1 and getting 4 phone calls. It's the same, right? You spent double the money, you got double the calls. You spent half the money, you got half the calls. So that's kind of how postcards are. You're going to get a lot less calls, but they're cheaper. And the professional letter and the yellow letter was working about the same. So no real major difference. And when Tanya gets in there full time soon, when she's out here able to help me, then we're going to start testing some stuff over the next 6 months, some stuff we've never tried before. Now, I don't recommend that to anyone in the group because honestly, it costs a lot of money to test, right? I just spent $9,000 trying to get Facebook to work. I wouldn't recommend that to you because I don't want you to spend $9,000 and be like, it didn't work. Use what's always worked. You know, you always have to have what's called the control. The control is the marketing you know is going to work. A yellow letter is the marketing you know is going to work. Now, when you start to get a little budget, you're making some money, like me, I can invest 5 or 10K to figure some stuff out. The best part is, as soon as I do, I'm going to share it with you, right? That way, you know, let me spend my money, and then, you know, that's part of being in this group. You get that luxury. I'll invest and say, hey guys, this is what I found out, right? You'll be the first to know. And once I find out for sure, though, I'm not going to tell you until then because I don't want to send you down any dark tunnels and, you know, be like, man, I tried that stupid thing and it didn't work. But if you try a yellow letter and your list is good, I promise you it'll work. I mean, it's never not worked.
Can we make suggestions to you on what to try? So
Yeah,
you
for
can
sure.
experiment with it?
Well, I mean, within reason, I might reject it because it's my money. So I might be like, that idea don't make sense. But yeah, I would love any recommendations. If you guys see, so actually, not that a great thing. If anyone on the group sees anything really cool or anything they hear about, maybe that's something that, you know, because I'm going to be doing this in about a month. So if you guys hear anything awesome, cool that you want to share, letter, anything like that, something you think's really unique and new that you haven't seen before, and doesn't cost $15. Like I love the message in a bottle, but that's not even that unique. But it costs like $4 or $5 to do that. I need something that's like $1. You know, give me something like $1 and it's unique, then I'm in. Like, I got to make sure the price is right. I don't want to be unique and be unique in like $5. That just does, because see, then the price won't make up for its uniqueness. Right? The price will kill all the benefit I get from it being unique. So that's the way I grow. But yes, I would love any recommendation. So like Cinnamon, Steve, Devora, you know, anyone on the call, Nick, if you're still on, anyone sees anything cool, feel free to share it because I will try it. If, you know, it might make the cut. I can't guarantee I'll try it, but I'm going to try the best suggestions because obviously I still have to take and make an educated guess.
I got a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Do you tend to stay away from homes that have tax liens on them?
No, I don't.
Okay.
It doesn't really
Yeah.
affect. I don't really care one way or the other if they have tax liens. I would say I tend to gravitate towards houses that have tax liens because that's a motivated situation.
Okay.
Would you be willing to try the GPS postage letters? Because that's one of the things that, like, I don't know, I feel like I'm curious about.
When you say GPS postage, are you talking about like the Google Street View or?
Yeah, the Google Street View letters they're doing now.
I mean, so I've heard some mixed reviews on them. You're going to get more calls, but a lot of your calls are people telling you I'm going to kill you because you got a picture of my house. So I'm probably going to try them because I've heard good stuff, but you know, definitely with a little reservation because, yeah, I mean, I got to be considerate whoever's answering that phone, you know, how that's going to affect them. Because I don't want a bunch of people like, what in the world? You got a picture of my house? Oh my God. Because it gets attention. So I definitely love that. And keep in mind, when it was new, it was probably awesome. But now that everyone's seeing it, it's definitely probably on the downside. I'm really looking for something not new that if you see it on YouTube, it's not new. So think of it like that. I mean, you know, it has to be something that we creatively think up as a cool idea that's not being used. Because by the time somebody's talking about it on YouTube or another guru saying, this is my cool new thing. Well, by the time you're hearing that, it means a lot of people are using it. So you're not really new at that point. You know, you're just kind of, well, you're newer than sending a yellow letter, but you ain't new, like really new or creative or different. What we want is when there's a pile of 15, whatever pieces of mail or direct mail sitting there, we want ours to completely stand out in some way, whether it's color, it's shape, size, you know, the doodles on it, anything that just makes us different, right? It's got to be something a little bit different they haven't seen before or haven't seen much of. But Google Street View will probably make it. Hey, what's up, Nick?
Hey, if you were going to look at a property that you know, like the property I'm going to Saturday, if you were going there with the full intention of wholesaling it, would you deduct, like, you know, you want to make 30,000 off the house when you're flipping it?
Yeah.
Would you make sure there's room on the when you wholesale it? Or would
Yeah.
you
I mean, so what I've seen with wholesale deals, if you buy it at the price that I would recommend you to buy it as a rehab, then, you know, maybe 5K less than that, there's going to be room for you to sell it for more because there's a lot of people out there that'll buy a house for 5 to 10K more than what we pay. So
Right.
those people are easy to find. With that being said, I wouldn't like max your number out and then buy it for that with knowing that you're wholesaling it. I might just get it for the low end of what I want to pay for it. Because
Okay.
then as long as I know there's 5 to 10K, I'm good with 5 to 10K, but then often what happens is the market gets really competitive and it turns into 10 or 20K. So, you know, that's the thing, especially this like pretty nice house. So you might get someone looking at the comps incorrectly and be like, yeah, this might be a 280. Like that person might pay you a bunch more. So when you have comps that aren't clear, it actually is, they're pretty great houses to wholesale because there's other people to look at the comps differently.
Cool.
And who knows, maybe they're right, by the way. I mean, I've had times where I thought it was 230 and I was like being definitely looked because the comps weren't clear. And then someone got like 270 and I was like, oh, come on, man. That sucks. But they definitely were getting a little bit lucky and we don't want to depend on luck. We want to depend on like stuff we know we can repeat. So when it's not clear, we always want to lean towards what is clear.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So I've been running into a lot of sellers who pretty much are upside down in their house and
Okay.
are willing to go through a short sale. I mean, so how do you handle that?
How I handle it is you get someone to do the short sale for you. The guy I would contact is in our group, in the higher level group. His name's Darshan. He's actually an expert at short sales. He's a guy I think you guys heard about, made 55K because he short sold a house and got it for a stupid cheap price and sold to me for a fair price. And they made 55K assignment fee. So I know I asked him about it and he said he would be willing to do short sales for, only for students, not for the general public, but other people in the mastermind. So if you just go onto the group, he should be a member in the group. Darshan Lucky is his name. And just hit him up and be like, hey, I'm in the group with you. And, I have some short sales coming up. Would you be open to doing them with me? You got to probably partner with him because he's going to bring all the value, by the way. You know what I'm saying? He's going to get that thing down to where it needs to be. And he's pretty much doing all the work. So yeah, you're definitely going to have to probably like 50-50 with him or something.
Hey, I take that.
Me too, by the way. I mean, if I got a short sale, I'm sending it to him because I don't want. First of all, even if I did all the work, I wouldn't get the result he gets. He gets some of the stupidest numbers I've ever seen. Takes him a long time though, but he gets it. Also, Devore had a question earlier. She asked about. Sorry, she asked about that maybe I think her brother-in-law seen a house who's a contractor and thought it was about 90 to 120 for it. And I think I said like 70 roughly, maybe in that ballpark. She was like, who do I go with? And I don't really know the answer to that. I haven't seen the house personally, but ultimately I would probably imagine that any kind of retail contractor generally isn't going to be, well, just in general, like I only represent the numbers I give you represent what I do it for and what your competitors are going to do it for. So the thing for you to always understand, if your competitors are doing it for say 70K, you have to find a way to be at 70K. Because what the market won't allow is for you to do it at 90 and then pay 20K less. The market, you're not really going to win deals that way because your offers will be too low, or your profit margin will be too low. One of the two would have to break. So, when somebody comes in and they want more money than what you're hearing from me, it just means that, their pricing isn't right. And we talk to contractors. I might talk to 15 of them before I get someone who's willing to do it for my price. We have to find very specific people. If people are making a really good living as a contractor, they're probably too expensive for us. If they're actually doing pretty well. Yeah.
Mike, my brother-in-law's, he's a rehabber, and I mean, he does the flips himself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's his cost that he would spend on it. It's not like the cost he's giving me.
Yeah, no, I got it, but it's high is all I'm saying.
Okay.
It's not the,
I'm
not saying it's not his cost. It's just it's not the cost you need to be at in order for you to make it in this industry. If that makes sense.
Okay, but I just there's no way I can go in there because I'm not risking my life because it's missing everything.
Yeah.
Floors and ceilings and walls. It was also a deserted project, and I've seen a bunch of them, maybe 3 this week, and I'm just curious about why a contractor would stop his project midway. Does that mean
was like a flipper or something usually?
Yeah. Why would purchase.
They run out of money, usually is what happens. That's why they walk away, because they grossly underestimate what needs to be done, or they never, I've seen people try to do like 70K renovations for 40 and they get into it, and then, or they give money to contractors and that contractor runs off. That's really common actually, where they get like a GC who says, I'll do it for 80, and then they give the GC like 25 up front, and then the GC does like 10K in work and gets the next 25, and then does 10K more in work. Now they're 50 in, and and the contractor disappears and has like 30K of their money, and then no one wants to kind of make that money up, or they don't have that extra money to make up. That's probably the most common reason, is that they probably mismanaged their contractor or someone. Because usually I'm talking to people like that from a lot of my mailers, where they've already started renovations and quit, and they'll always be like, oh yeah, I got like 80K in this thing already. And I'm looking around thinking like, this is like 25. Like, dude, you did like 25 in work, man. Like, no, man, it was 80K, man. Like, what do you mean? There ain't much. They'll be like, how much you think is to finish? Like 25, because I already put 80 in it. It's 105K renovation. And I'm looking at it saying, no, it's like 85 left. Like, it's all the renovations left. You like framed it out. You gutted it, demoed it, and framed it. Like, that's not a lot of work. There's no electric, plumbing, HVAC, anything. So, obviously they never want to hear that, because it means they've been taken and they've been put in a bad spot. So that is the normal reason people abandon stuff. It's not like, when I seen that, remember I was like, some work's been done. I actually looked at it and thought, I mean, obviously dangerous for you, so you shouldn't walk in. But from a renovator standpoint, I was like looking at some of the value that had been brought to the house, the fact that it had been cleaned out and all that.
Okay. One other question. I was going to look at a house I sent to my brother-in-law. It was also a rehabber, had abandoned it. There was like massive water damage.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, what's the story with this one? He says, oh, I looked at that one. I actually had the opportunity to get it for, like less than they bought it for. But there was issues with the permit. Then they had built like onto the second floor,
Okay.
and had done a really poor job without a permit. So when you buy it, you're risking, the city coming in and condemning it and all the rest. What's your thoughts on risks like that?
That's a little bit scary. I mean, normally I'm always telling you, like, don't worry about it. But I will tell you, the one time I bought a house like that and I did pull permits, it was.
But you wouldn't even know about it. You wouldn't even know about it because the flipper's not going to tell you.
Well, if you see like something's been added, like you can tell, you can always just go online and look and see if there's like open permits or no permits. I mean, I don't worry about it if it's already done and it's not something that's, I'm not too worried about. But if you can tell a second floor has been put on, and like you can see that second floor has been put on, like maybe they're in the process of finishing it, that's different. But if it's been there for any period of time, it's actually grandfathered in. I've never heard of the city ever coming, if something's been there for a while, and telling you to tear it down or do anything like that. They commonly do that in California and some other tougher states, but never have I seen that in Maryland. Because a lot of people say they have that concern, like, well, what if it was built without a permit and they make you tear it down? Well, I've never seen them do that. They actually, for the most part, what I've seen is they usually are just like, yeah, it's there, it's been there, don't worry about it. I mean, that's my opinion, but again, obviously you have to take your own risk. I've personally, in all the deals I've done, I've never worried about an addition. It was done without permits, as long as it's already been done and already been there and like before me. Now, if they're in the process of doing the addition, that's a whole different story. Like maybe they got halfway into it and then ran off. Well, that means you kind of have to take it on from like doing it right, essentially, because it's not done and been lived in.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I hope there's like clarity in the difference between the two. Yeah. So like if it's already there and someone lived in it, then I don't worry about it. Because you know how many additions were done? Like, first of all, you couldn't even pull permits like 30, 40 years ago. So there's a lot of things that were put on 30, 40 years ago. And then for the first 20 years, they had a rent department. No one cared. Like, I mean, it was like they were there, but no one respected them, right? No one cared. So we have like, if something's 20, 30 years old, in theory, they're kind of like, they can't do anything about it because it was already there, right? You can't come trying to retroactively enforce a thing that happened before you even existed or before you were even taken serious. At least is what they're doing here. Now in California, not so much. I hear they'll actually make you tear it down. So it's not an untrue statement where you are.
That's funny. I have 4 additions on the house I'm buying, and all of them were purchased with the Sears catalog. So that tells you how old they are.
Yeah, so they probably didn't need permits back then. Huh. That's interesting. Wonder if they got a lifetime warranty on them.
Yeah, that's a different company.
It's gone. Yeah, I think they went out of business, that part of Sears.
Maybe the Costco catalog, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've had a bunch. I had one house I bought where the renovator had put a second floor, a complete new second floor on it, and he sheetrocked it all, so it looked good to me. And then when they made us tear a sheetrock out, it looked like he took a bunch of spare wood and glued it together with a hot glue gun, and it was like the whole second floor. It was like I'd never seen anything like it. So I ended up ripping the whole second floor off, and that ended up being a deal. I think we broke even, or we didn't make no money on it. It was definitely a nightmare as far as headache and how long it took and all that. But that's the only bad case study that I could share with you was that one. And I bought it knowing it was already done. I also knew that the permits were bad and that I had to get it all up to code because it had a stop work order on it. I did the research. So I bought it knowing that I was taking that risk, but that definitely didn't anticipate how much risk I was actually signing up for. So I would probably say that if someone was putting a second floor on and had done it already, and you didn't have the ability to inspect it or anything, like you couldn't see it because of sheetrock. Knowing what I know now, I would have went in and taken the sheetrock off before I bought it and looked at it. Because as soon as I would have taken that sheetrock off, I mean, he had 2x4s that were like this long. Like, I mean, literally, like he put a bunch of scrap wood together. It had glue on it. Like, I mean, it was nuts. I'd never seen anybody build a roof. I had no clue how it just didn't cave in. I mean, seriously, it's like it was all held together with it was very creative. I mean, we were talking about some really high cathedral ceilings. It was super creative, like bad work. So yeah, that was but 800 plus deals. I ran into one of those. For the most part, not a big deal. I mean, that particular one was me being a little bit like, I think I can make this work. So it was definitely one of those times when I try to make some magic, and it did not turn into magic. So I don't try to magic make now. Like, I mean, look, there's some things people ask me, like, should you be concerned? And they're not valid concerns. And, because they just don't happen enough. Now, there's times where I'll look at things and be like, you should be concerned, but I'm going to put a plan together to try to overcome that concern. And that's me taking risk because I do a lot of volume and I can take that risk. When you're doing one house at a time, or you're only doing your first house, I never will tell you to take that risk, like a big risk, and I want you to make it as easy as possible, obviously.
Hey, Mike. So, are you having any issues as far as closing right now with this ransomware? Because all the title companies that I've dealt with, they're trying to get these sellers to put down a big escrow.
Well, yes, they don't have to put up too big of an escrow. Usually what they have them do, I mean, what my title companies have done is they're having the seller sign something saying they'd be responsible for anything that's not coming up later. So they'll come back and then they have to go file that with Baltimore, so they actually literally have to go file it in person. So that's what we've been doing. They still got to probably put up something, but they're not making them put a bunch of money up. I mean, at least my company isn't. So I'm not, every company has their own way of doing business. So what I would say, Justin, to give you an answer is that, yes, I am running into a problem. However, I would challenge whatever title company you're using to find a solution. Does that make sense? Because there is a solution out there. My company found it when I got on their butt. I was like, I'm not going to accept there's no solution. I need these houses sold, and I need this house done. And we have found solutions when we did that.
Okay.
Something reasonable too. Not like when you say they're making them put up a big escrow, how much are we talking?
They were talking at least 5,000.
Well, that's not too crazy if it's like, I don't know, it depends on the house, but yeah, I mean, because it'll be fixed shortly.
Yeah, but the thing about it, the sellers are broke. I mean, that's why they're selling.
Oh, got it. So you mean they don't have any equity or anything?
Right.
Well, then it is what it is. Then that's not going to happen, essentially.
Yeah.
You got to get some people with equity would be my first piece of advice. Like a little equity, because people aren't all that motivated. If they don't have a check to come to settlement for, they're not that motivated, man. You're going to have a lot of issues that come up when people don't have money. I always like people to have at least like 3 to 5K that they're going to get at settlement, because people get out of bed, man. They'll get out of bed to get 3 to 5K.
Right.
If they're getting 20 or 30, it's a no brainer. But like if they're even getting like 1,000 or 2, they'll get out of bed. But when you start being like, yeah, you're going to break even, they're almost like, man, I ain't doing that. They just start getting complaining about everything because it's like a big inconvenience because there's nothing for them. But if you can get a little bit of money for them, that changes everything. Like I've seen people come here really happy to get 1,500.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, this one guy, he's only getting 3,000, but like I said, the title company's trying to get him to put up 5. I'm like, that's not going to work.
What title company are you using?
This one is Terrain.
I never heard of them.
Yeah, they're up in Owens Mills.
Yeah, I mean, talk to them about I know I recommend Holly and all them at Clearview, but basically what they've been doing, they've not made anybody put 5K up. So I mean, they've been signing a paperwork saying the seller will come back. But with that being said, your bigger problem might be if you're wholesaling it, is that the buyer might want that put up, because the person buying it might be like, I don't want to take the risk that they won't pay it.
Right.
If that makes sense. But hopefully this will be cleared up soon. That's what we're all hoping for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and so it's over what? The ransom is only what, 75,000, right?
Yeah, but they're not paying it. They're 18 million in right now. They're not paying it. So they've spent 18 million fixing the problem right now because they don't want to pay 75. But to be fair, you give them 75, you know how it works. It's kind of like the hood. You give them 75, they might just roll out on your money, and I'm pretty sure they're not fixing the problem for 75. They're probably going to take the money and just laugh and then be like, hey, give me another 75. I don't think they're actually going to probably like do good business. I wouldn't expect. So their only opportunity to make money right now. So yeah, they're 18 million into fixing the problem. But from what I hear, they're saying, a few people have said from the city, it should be good in a week or two, but I don't know that to be sure. And when it is, they're like, it's going to be pretty rough though for a while. So they're thinking it's going to be a little bit of more than a wreck than it is. But what my people have been doing is they've been going down to the city and they've been following this piece of paper saying that it's basically like an affidavit saying that the seller of the property agrees to pay the water bill, and the city is actually accepting that as like they will now go after the seller instead of the new buyer. But they're going to go after the seller. So the seller is signing an affidavit saying that this is going to be like my water bill. So if I don't pay it, then you're allowed to come after me and put a lien on me to come in for the pay it. So it won't be the responsibility of the new buyer. So that's what we've been doing, and that's been working.
Okay, I got you.
But your title company has to be down with it. Yeah, just ask them to find a solution, because there's so many people for a while were like, there's no solution. And I'm like, I don't accept that, man.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just shut a whole city down.
Yeah.
Gotta be some solution. What I found was there was a solution, just nobody wanted to do it because you had to go up and sit in line for 3.5 hours to get it through. But now what my title company said she's doing, because she has so many, she completely runs off investors. So she's like, yeah, we're just sending someone there for the whole day, and they just like do a bunch at once.
Oh.
That's what they've been doing to overcome it. So yeah, good luck with that, man.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Well, before we go, does anybody else have any questions?
I have a last question.
Sure. Good.
And it's the same. It's about the lien as well. Does the amount of the house normally cover the lien? So I shouldn't be scared to jump in something like that, or?
No, I wouldn't worry about it too much. If your title company will give you title insurance, then you should be good. The title companies have a pretty high standard of how they can sell you a house because they're writing you an insurance policy. And that insurance policy, you can sue it if they don't do their job correctly. So a title company who cares, anyone that I recommend, or, they care and they're going to do a good job for you. Doesn't mean there won't be some problems, but they're going to avoid most of the stupid problems. Now, what you got to be careful of is like when the bank says use my title company, they're usually out of state, and they're just like untouchable. They're like the mafia. They just do stuff, and then you come to them and say like, hey, you missed a $4,000 water bill, and they're like, yeah, well, you're gonna have to pay that. Like what? Like that was their job to pay, and you missed it. And then they're like, okay, well, send us a letter here, and we'll think about it. And you just get put in this black hole. And so now that's why I don't use the bank's title company when they're like, we would recommend you a title company. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that, because I've had that happen to me like 3 times when I did use a title company. But when you use a decent title company, they'll make sure you're good. And if you ever have a concern, send them in, you just ask. Just say, hey, is this okay, title company? Like is this thing going to be 100% safe? And if they're like, yeah, you're all good, it means they'll usually won't lie to you about it. Now, if you don't ask them, they might not be very thorough about it. So that's why I believe in asking them and communicating with them to let them know I expect them to be thorough and for me to be able to sell this house in a couple months. All right. Cool, everyone. I will see you guys on Tuesday. So everybody have a great weekend, and everybody do some cool stuff. Go make some offers. See you later, everyone.
All right. Take it easy, Mike.